All right, guys. Hi, and welcome to our podcast about design, journey, and challenges. This is our fourth podcast in the series of podcasts we've been having called the DSC Afterhours, where we discuss whatever topics people might be interested in and want to know more about. So,
Whenever all of us are starting on learning something new, we did not know where to, start off with or what to exactly do. Or simply we just get intimidated by the vast scope of the topic. So, as our topic, design journey and challenges is here today, we will be discussing about our journeys, how we began, and what approaches should a beginner take, tools. Basically, we'll be having a general discussion about design and its current trends. So, I think why don't we start about by introducing ourselves, Aditya?
hi guys. I am Aditya Rathore. I am the part of the design team alongside Ishi and Shavni. So my main role in DSC as of now is to mainly handle the projects that come out. So I overlook whatever UI UX requirements they might have and manage that.
Ishi.
Yeah.
I'm a second year CS student and a part of the design team here at DSC. I love exploring different domains, but my interest and experience lies mainly in graphic.
I'm Shravani, and I think I've been a part of this club since the past 2 years. I do UI, UX, and graphic, and I'm really excited to share my journey with all of you here today. Today we have with us here Samarth Nair, who is from the industry and has been the ex-DSC lead. He currently works as the product designer at Paytm Insider and has also worked with Mate My Trip, GoIbibo, and Airtel. It's really nice to have you here today, and yeah, why don't you go and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. First of all, thank you for thinking that I'm capable to come here, and thank you for inviting me. Um, a little bit about myself. I was a designer at DSC-VIT, just like everybody else here. I became the design lead, then I became the community lead, and I kind of paved my way using that path to get into the industry of design. And now, currently, after a couple of internships, I am working as a product designer at Paytm Insider, wherein I look at a lot of UI side of things and manage those.
That's really interesting. And yeah, I think why don't we start with going about our journeys and how DSC has helped us through it? I think I'll go first. Um, For me, my design journey started off with, completely DSC itself. Before this, for me, design was something that was literally on paper, or at max, the digital form of design I knew was MS Paint. And I still remember, bringing those sheet of papers on which I actually drew to my recruitments, and I didn't know what to do. And my seniors were just like, "Oh my God, what is this?" But they didn't give up on me and they told me how you should download software. So I remember someone telling me how I should download XD and try working around it for a few hours. And I took a night and I was quite surprised with what I could make, by that morning. And so here I am today. So it got off really well on that part. At DSC, I think I got a vast exposure while working on internal and external projects as well as events. Because I think before this, I was quite good at drawing, and that helped me throughout my journey, but not that case with everybody, of course. I remember coming in here, at the first night meeting and seeing such talented people working. I was really, really intimidated, and I didn't know where to start off with. In the beginning, I remember how posters is used to take like 2 or 3 days to make, although now it takes like just half an hour, a few minutes, but that time it was back then it was quite a big deal. I remember someone telling me the smallest and the stupidest changes that I needed to make in my poster, even at night, even at 2 a.m. in the night when the poster was supposed to go up at 1 in the at in the morning, just tell me that these are changes that need to be made, and I used to make them and give them. Yeah, and that has helped me grow throughout here. So yeah, and at DSC we follow, a few themes and stuff. And every time you get to work on something new, and that's really exciting. And eventually, I think I inclined on doing UI UX more and gradually just shifted on doing majorly on, projects. So, yeah, I think that's quite my journey at DSC. So, yeah.
I'll take it up from here. I
Yeah.
think my journey would be a little more different from anyone else here, because actually it all started in my school, where I'm from Delhi. So Delhi has this huge circuit of designers, developers, and general development enthusiasts who pick up stuff and go to competitions. And it's a big, big circle. So I was part of that, and I was part of the computer group in my school, and I was actually the front end developer there. So we used to create teams and go to competitions, and I usually went in with another front end developer who used to do the management of different tasks, like presenting things on the screen and getting in data, and I was the person who was actually with CSS actually designing stuff. So that was kind of my first journey into design. And when I came to college, I joined DSC-VIT, which was at that time called GDG-VIT. And when I joined in DSC-VIT, I was actually recruited as a front end developer. And I think on my first or second day, I was told that I am absolutely crap at front end development. I have no idea what I'm doing. I Whatever I do is actually doing design on HTML and CSS. So they told me that, why don't you shift to design and pick it up, and let's see where you can go from there. So on my third day in a night meeting, I downloaded all these softwares. I For the first time ever, I actually got to know what actually design is. And I took up a little bit of work here and there. And 1 month down the line, I was actually once again told that no, my design skills are also like crap. So I was like, damn, I'm not good at anything. So I kind of took it to heart, went on, worked really hard on both my front end skills and my design skills. And 1 year down from there, I was the design lead. So anything that happened in design went through me and another guy, Aritro. Both of us were working hard and pulling off everything, and everybody knew that anything that happened through design was through us. So and 1 year down the line, I kind of became the community lead of DSC-VIT, and I kind of wanted to make it into a design first community. And I kind of did that, in which our posters and UX designs and everything took a step forward in terms of they had a meticulous process to it. And just like every other thing, I was very, very passionate about getting into the industry of design. And I took it upon my heart that I wanted to get into the design industry. I did a couple of internships, and yeah, now I'm a product designer at Paytm Insider, wherein I do a little bit of front end as well. So yeah, anybody who has ever told me that, no, dude, you're not good at it, I took it at heart and I worked hard for it. And I kind of, I think I did well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, definitely did well, and that's really inspiring. Seeing all the criticism and then still going forward with it. But for me, mostly thanks to you, it has been mostly, not very hard criticism. It's just small pointers I get throughout my journey. So for people watching, my journey started when in middle school only, just like Samarth. So instead of front end, I actually got into 3D VFX. Saw this Facebook post about some 3D software, and I really got into the idea of making these 3D visual effects. So I looked up some softwares, found out that Autodesk Maya was the best in class, downloaded it, and started going. So I got my ball rolling in design by literally making a ball and making it roll and lit it up on fire using the software. And I was really impressed how by the result I got, because that was really like adjusting a few sliders or making a keyframe here and there, and getting such a smooth and good looking result. So I continue doing that, and just like Samath mentioned, we used to have competitions hosted by different schools in Delhi. So I got to be a part of my school's computer club, and because of this skill only. And I used to go and participate in competitions where I actually, in one competition, someone actually came to my school and played a game that I had made in eighth grade. And we never met, but later we got to know. So that was really interesting. I think you remember that, right, Samad?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually remember in one of the night meetings, me and another guy was just talking that I went to a competition at school, and people were so talented that they made games when they were so young. And there was a guy in eighth class who made a game that was like Counter Strike based, and it was actually the school, and we were playing levels. And then Aditya came from behind me, and he was like, "Bhaiya, maine kiya hai." And I was like, "Whoa!"
It's such a coincidence. I actually sacrificed a lot of grades for that game, and yeah, it finally paid off. Yeah, so that's so yeah, from 3D, I had seen like people working around me in competitions doing proper design, like changing colors and making websites. So I had some exposure in design, and when I gave the interview for DSC, I actually met Shravani. So at that point of time, I was yeah.
Can I just
So
interrupt here?
yeah.
So yeah, I think yeah. So at my interview, I remember seeing two guys, one of which was Aditya, and so when I was there, I never knew any software. So my seniors told me to download the softwares right in the recruitment process, right? And when I saw Aditya, he told me how he knew all the softwares, how he used to make videos and stuff. And I was like, oh shit, I don't have a chance here now. But then I think it worked out well for the both of us. So yeah.
Yeah, and actually, even you made gave me a complex because at that point I was unsure whether to go in te design or technical because I had some exposure in technical but not too much. And design, I thought that it was m much more linked towards drawing and actual art skills, which I had none to speak of. And seeing your drawing book and all your drawings just really intimidated me. So, but anyway, I gave the interview, and yeah, both of us, yeah, and it turned out well, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So being a DSC member, I also got to learn a lot besides just the illustrations and the UI UX. I still remember when we made the first Women Techies video. Samad Bhaiya sat beside me and actually taught me the software. I had entered the club on the pretext that I actually knew After Effects, but that wasn't really true. And Samad Bhaiya still helped me out and showed me around the software. And I made that made my first video which turned out okay, and I got a lot of praise for it, and that was a huge like motivation for me to continue forward in this field because I actually got something that like got people to appreciate me, and yeah, it's just been a growing and learning journey for me thereafter. But like for us, Samatya was there, and for Ishi, she was a really promising junior when we saw her in interviews. So I'm really curious to know how was your journey, Ishi?
My journey was sort of similar to Shravani's in the sense that it started here at DSC only. I remember in my first year, I was a very typical fresher. I was very excited about everything. I wanted to, try everything and meet everyone. And that's when club started recruiting. I was like, this is the perfect opportunity. So I used to draw and stuff a little in school, and I thought, okay, why not try design? Because I thought it would be similar, but it was an entirely different ball game, honestly. I started watching a lot of YouTube tutorials and I started exhausting all these different inspiration sources. And I went down a rabbit hole, which I guess worked out for me because here I am today. Honestly speaking, I wasn't great when I started. Like, I still cringe when I see my first poster. It was honestly very bad. But it took me a while to get there. And seeing me now, I can make something better in lesser time, and my productivity has increased a lot. And I guess the most fundamental aspect of my journey here has actually been you guys. Like everything I have learned in design, I have learned through my seniors. And that's why I think it's very important to have a mentor or somebody who can give you feedback on your work. And once you do get that feedback, it's important to take it in a positive light and not take it to the heart. Because if I had gotten demotivated back then, I would never have come here. And right now, I guess there's still a long way to go, but I'm really proud of my journey so far.
That's really great to hear. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so most of us had people around us who doing design, or at least people to guide us how to get started in design. But but for a lot of people, that's not really present who want to get started early on in it, or simply lack the resources to get help. So something I've been curious about is how would you approach, like how to would you tell someone to get started in design? What practices or what ways they can they do? What things can they do to get started?
hmm. So what I think for me worked out was, that one drawing advantage that I had. So whenever someone told me ki, yeah, in a few days we have to put up a poster with this in it, I somehow built it in my mind saying, oh, I knew ki, I had to do this. But, getting an inspiration from somewhere and how to exactly start working on it was a great challenge. And, so I would go about watching these basic tutorials on YouTube, which would teach us how to use those basic tools in Illustrator and XD and how to go about working with them. So I think in my journey, I think these random YouTube tutorials have come a lot in handy. So because once you know what to do and you start getting something down on that blank board, and I think after that itself, you actually know how to go about it. So I think, yeah, I started off that way. Samad.
You know what? For me, as I said, I was from a development background, and when I shifted to design, for me, it started out with Photoshop. And I still remember how I started off was whenever a poster was asked from me, I used to Google image related to that. Like even if they asked me to make, let's say, a flower, I would Google an image for that, find which one is like the best looking, and then paste it on Photoshop and then trace it using the pen tool. So that's actually how got started with understanding pen tool and understanding the tools with a lot of practice. I think there are much better ways now. There are multiple websites that help you out with that. There are multiple tutorials that help you out with that. But at the end, what matters is a lot of practice. And the only reason why I got good at illustrations and also with the pen tool for UX stuff as well, um, is because I practiced a lot of stuff. When I was tracing stuff, I kind of understood that I can press Alt and I can change the angle for this. I can press Shift and actually draw a straight line. And that took me a lot more time in comparison to anybody else. But at the end, I was much more stronger than anybody who just watched a lot of tutorials because I had practiced a lot more. And I would suggest this to anybody who picks up anything, not just design. Even if it's anything out there, you have to stick to it and you have to practice it. Anything you start, it's going to be difficult, and there has there there'll and at some point you'll see a dip, and at that dip it's like I don't think I'm growing over. I don't think I'm learning anymore. That's the dip point, and everybody faces that dip, and 90% of the people leave during that dip. And I think the best part is if you don't leave through that dip, you're one of those 10% people who actually come out of that dip and are better than those 90% people who leave. So I think that keep sticking to it. And also a lot of people do ask me about tools as well, and also how to take notes. That is something that is very important as well. But first I would suggest is that you understand any tool. You can pick up any tool. You can pick up Adobe XD, you can pick up Sketch, you can pick up Figma, you can pick up Photoshop, you can pick up Illustrator. There are hundreds of tools out there actually for design. There are actually web based tools now which are like free to use. Just go and use it. You can get Photoshop for free online on a website. You can do that, and just go there, just use that tool and keep using it, keep using it till you understand it to the core, that even if the owner of that tool asks you a question, you know about it. So I think any tool you can, it really doesn't matter, because a lot of people come to me that which tool should I start out with. Start out with any tool, and if you don't like it, move to another tool. You'll find your tool and then you'll dive into it. I think that's the best possible way to get started.
Yeah, I think as Samad said, the tools. For me personally, I felt that, tools was choosing tool was a really important job because I didn't really know how, good I was at going about, making a design actually with just a mouse and a blank paper on your screen. So I was really confused, and someone did suggest the Illustrator to me, which is a really, really versatile tool. Has all the options a designer needs to get started off with. And although there are like many, many tools in it, but just like 3 to 4 important tools. Once you watch those, YouTube tutorials, you get to know that there are 3 to 4 really important tools that you need to, get started off with, and that automatically gets you running. Once you start using those tools, you automatically figure out what is to be done next, and yeah, so you start figuring out. But I think there was a point in my journey where I gradually shifted from using Illustrator to, I think, XD, because I just felt it was really easy to use with simply. And it was so nice how I could just copy paste stuff from here to there without even thinking about it. And yeah, so I think, yeah, that's what happened. So,
Yeah, even for with me, like all of us collectively started slowly moving to XD from Illustrator because like for the simple things like it has a much simpler UI. The color picker, in my opinion, is like way better. Even the gradient tool is also good. So it actually simplified the process for us, I guess. So that's why like all of us have stopped using Illustrator for most of the things, barring the fact that sometimes you have to make like some complex illustrations, so we have to go back to Illustrator. But other than that, I guess most of our work has shifted to XD only. Um, although
Okay, but now that we're talking about
yeah.
XD, I think there's something I would like to bring up here. There's a very heated debate in the design world when it comes to XD versus Figma. The general trend nowadays is that a lot of people are shifting their entire workflow to Figma because it certainly has some advantages. What do you guys feel about that?
If we really do talk about XD versus Figma, I would personally prefer Figma. But let me just deep dive into this in terms of a story. So when I was actually applying for my first job, I used to work with XD a lot. So uh, I was when I became the community lead of DSC-VIT. I mean, everybody else was like on Photoshop or Illustrator, and I kind of forced everybody to move over to XD. And the way I did that is that I used to make the first poster, and then I asked them to make some changes to it, and I sent them the XD file. So they had no other option to use XD, and they slowly got accustomed to it, and they started using it. So that was a way of getting them to switch to XD. And once I got accustomed to XD, I kind of went deep into it, understood how its components work, how its textiles work, and all. And I always asked everybody to follow a process. But then I researched a little about when I was applying for jobs that what do industries actually use, and the name that specifically came out to me at all times was Sketch, and this is like almost a year back, or maybe 1.5 year back. The Figma was not in trend at that time, and everybody was using Sketch. So I kind of prepared for Sketch. I took 1 month. I deleted all my XD files, and I made sure that everything I did was in Sketch. And it was like a very, very painful process for me at start because XD and Sketch do clash in terms of the shortcuts you use. But once I got used to it after a week, I understood that why people use Sketch. It has more collaborative features in comparison to XD. XD has recently brought up those collaborative features, but then I gave my interview. Like I completely understood what how Sketch works and how Sketch is important and why people use Sketch. And I made a couple of projects as well. Then I went to my interview and I asked them that they asked me that can you show me one of your files, and I opened up Sketch and they told me that do you use Sketch like primarily. I told them I can use Sketch, I can use Illustrator, I can use Photoshop, I can use XD. Then they told me can't you use Figma, and I was like that was the only tool I didn't prepare for. So I kind of understood this the hard way that the tools keep on changing. So you need to understand one tool to the depth, and it is very easy to shift to another tool. So once I shifted from Sketch to Figma, I understood why people prefer it more because of its collaborative features. You can translate one component to another, from one page to another in a breeze. So my job at my company is to maintain a lot of components, make sure that everything follows a structure, like buttons look the same, components look the same and stuff. And it really does help me that I have one page that is a library, and everybody else is building their own pages, doing whatever they want, building their own files. They just have to link to my library, and later, maybe 2 weeks down the line, I just feel like this button is rounded. I don't want it to be rounded, I just want it to be a square. So I just change it in the library, and it changes on everybody else's file. And it's very important for that to happen in a company. And I think that's where Figma shines, and that's why people are preferring it a lot, because on Sketch or XD, those features are a little limited. Either you have to sync it through Google Drive, or you have to use Sketch Cloud, or for XD you need to use Adobe Cloud, and that's a little finicky at the moment. And Figma, being a web-based tool, really helps in terms of bringing that out. But my transition from Sketch to Figma was a breeze, because I had already deep dived into XD, I had already deep dived into Sketch. I had the complete idea of how these two tools work, and Figma brings the best of both worlds together in this. And when I went into it, it took me maybe an hour to get used to it, and I actually started preferring it. So yeah, I think whenever you do something, just make sure that you deep dive into it, and you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and it'll be easier to move to another tool because of that. And for me, I would personally prefer Figma, but I don't judge anybody else who's using anything else, because I understand the benefits of each and every tool. And you do that after you push one tool. And there are multiple ways of doing that. Even if, let's say, you do 3D or video, I think Aditya could talk better about that.
Yeah, so like talking about the importance of tools, it's in 3D especially, you have to really pick and choose your starting tool a little bit more carefully, because there are mainly three tools that exist, if I'm being honest. It's Autodesk Maya, Blender, and then Cinema 4D. And each have their own uses, definitely. But for someone who's just starting it out as a hobby, it's really important that you take out your personal interest and you monitor that how much time you have to put into this. Because Autodesk Maya is a more tool, more targeted towards industry professionals, people who are working in teams, people who have assigned roles that have manage specific jobs that go into the production of a 3D VFX shot. So when I started Autodesk Maya, I definitely felt a lot of shortcomings. It's not that the tool was bad, I really enjoyed my time with it. But when I saw people using Blender in competitions or anywhere else, I really felt that I picked the wrong tool, because in Blender, some things are just really simplified, and it handles a lot of stuff. It's easier to manage its license. It's a 200 MB installation file, for example. I had to carry a hard drive which carried my 4 GB Maya installation, and people just used flash drives because it was a 200 MB installation. So yeah, it was a huge problem for me starting out. And like for someone who's just getting in, Blender has improved a lot over the years, and it's just Maya is not in competition with it right now because of the denoising and a lot of new features they've added in their 1.1.8 release. And it's getting better only, and it's open source, it's free, so it really does make sense for you to start out. I think Samat also started out in 3D very recently, so I'm interested to know what you have to say about this.
Um, I really don't have that much knowledge of 3D. I just started out with it like a few months back, and I kind of gave up on it because I found that I'm good at UX, I'll stick to UX. But I did do it a little in terms of Blender. And I kind of understood the, and I also texted Aditya but this was during college time as well. And I asked him that what tool does he use and why doesn't he use Blender? And he at that time told me that he just found out that Maya was the best tool when he searched on Google. And for
Yeah.
me, it changed. I searched on Google and I found Blender, so I used that. So yeah, the trends keep on changing. You just have to pick up on what the trend is. And the newer tool you use, it actually makes your life easier as well. So it's really not important that you go on a tool that is used by the industry. You can start out with any other tool and then move to the tool. You have a lot of time on your hand if you're a fresher or you're in college.
Yeah, definitely. And also something that's very related to 3D, because where else are you going to use 3D except in After Effects or motion graphics? So in motion graphics, a lot of people have trouble starting out because illustration you can still understand that it's essentially a drawing, right? You took a tool and just drew it out. But in video, it's hard to understand because a lot of things are happening at once. There's music playing, there's a lot of shapes changing into other shapes, and it's tough to get started or to get an idea of how to, introduce yourself into that mindset of making motion graphics. So starting with the tool, I would recommend After Effects. I guess it's the only way to go. There are other tools coming up, but it's been in use for so long. It has a lot of tutorials, and you'll really find some good resources for it. So I would definitely say go with After Effects. Also, when you're starting out, let's just assume that you have a starter motion graphics project. So maybe your club or whatever, whoever or whatever organization you're working for has some sort of a motion graphics tasks for you. So mostly they would want to showcase an event or something like that, right? So you will have talking points that you would want to depict in motion or using graphics. So what you can do is you can boil those concepts down to their basic shapes and represent them as simply as possible. That is the obviously the starter approach. Or if you have to differentiate, you will have to go more complex. But when you're starting out, it really helps to boil down illustrations into their simplest forms. So, for example, if you have group discussion and the next talking point is, let's just say quiz. These are two aspects of a hackathon you're trying to promote. So, what you can do is you can represent group discussion as part of some as humans, I think a lot of people on a frame could depict group discussion. And for representing people, you could use what Google used to use for their contact icons, contact avatars before their redesign. So they were essentially just two circles, one cut off by the frame, and that represented the head and torso. So how I visualize it is that you can transition that from two circles to a circle with a rectangle coming out. That can be the mic, and that can represent quiz. Obviously, you need text to support that message. So once you have this planned out, that what shapes you need to use and what how you're going to transition into them, make sure you take a notebook and actually draw them out on a piece of paper. That really helps before getting started because it allows your mind to already know it allows you to plan ahead and allows you to know that what part of the frame will be occupied by which object and what part of the frame uh, you need to use for the transition. So when you have it all noted down, you can actually uh, start out by already having in mind how the video is going to turn up, and actually helps you avoid making a lot of mistakes that a lot of beginners make, and that really discourages them because if you make a mistake on the third second of the video and the video is 12 seconds long, you have to actually change all the remaining 9 seconds of the video because in video everything is dependent on the frame that came before it, right? So it is a tedious process, and if you are not careful, you will actually end up discouraging yourself. So that is really important that you plan out and you note it down on a notebook. And I
Yeah,
think,
true, true. I
yeah.
mean, because before we're actually starting to design something, it's really important, we get the workflow right. We have something planned on mind before we actually start working, which is what we do at DSC. Before, I think as a whole in the design team, before we get anything to work on, be it an event or a project, what we do is we sit together first and ideate for a lot of amount of time. And so we have themes for our different, projects and events. So talking about events, in the theme, we first have a color palette. Only those and only those colors can be used throughout any posters that could, come up on our social media or the app or the website we make. And the fonts also are very important. So once we get that right, we are good to go. So the same thing is with projects. So once we decide the theme, what we used to do in college, as I remember, is there used to be a whiteboard, and in our meetings, we used to actually draw boards and navigate what each button does, and then draw lines and connect them to the next, board. So yeah, once you have that workflow in your mind, because an individual is working on these projects, so if how much will they work on it, because like even they will get confused at one point of time because it gets so monotonous they won't be able to carry out the flow. So what we do is we ideate first, and I think then move on to actually making stuff, which comes to the later half of the entire process. So yeah, I think, Ishi, what do you think about graphics? Because now that you've come in newly, I think you must have also come across this. issue, and how did you face this?
Okay, so we at DSC roll out a lot of posters. I think anybody who follows us on social media knows that. In the past 1 year, I have worked on so many posters that I think I can give a pretty cool feedback on my workflow and what I do when a poster is assigned to me. So, firstly, when I first get the topic, it's very difficult to visualize what you want your poster to look like. Like, you can't just get a mental image like that. The first step for me is always research. I turn to like sources such as Dribble, Behance, or even Instagram because there are a lot of cool creators who post their designs there frequently. So yeah, I look for inspiration. Also, a very important source of inspiration that many people neglect is actually the real world. For example, if I'm making an illustration of a human being, I might actually look at pictures of humans just to get the basic anatomy down and just to make it resemble it somewhat. And as far as struggle is concerned, I used to struggle a lot with graphics. I remember the first time I ever used Illustrator, I had such a hard time using the pen tool. It was unlike anything I had ever done before. And Summer suggested this really cool website to me. It's called the Bezier Game. What it allows you to do is basically practice how to use your mouse for illustrating purposes and like drawing difficult curves and things like that. And I guess ultimately that practice has been the reason why I have eventually gotten better at it and come at a place where I can actually, be here in this podcast and giving people advice, I guess. Although there is one thing that I still struggle with, and that is typography. I feel like I have 100 different fonts downloaded on my laptop, but I still keep going back to the same three or four. So, do you guys have any tips for that?
Um, I think, to get started off with, for a beginner, what is typography? Typography is basically, arranging letters or say text in a format that is, visually appealing to your users. So initially, even I didn't know what is the difference between the different kind of fonts that you see, because uh, I used to get so confused, and every time I used to make a poster, it was either in one font, and I always used to go to Samarth and be like, okay, now what am I supposed to do? But a simple understanding is that why don't you use a Comic Sans font for your formal document? Because it does not convey the message in a right way or an effective way, because such designs have which have unique typography ideas. They create a brand on their own and can communicate well with the audience or in an effective way, I think, because typography allows the designers to create a visual impact using their brand. And I think Samarth can take a better take on this than I can.
So yeah, I guess I'm telling a lot of stories, but another story time. So when I was like the senior, I was in third year, and Aditya and Shravani were just recruited. So both of them were given like poster work in the starting, and then they slowly shifted to UX work. So anytime they got a new poster or some UX work in the start, I mean, after a month it was completely fine, but in the start they used to come to me for like design review in terms of, Samarth, how is this, how does this look, how can we improve? And the only feedback I used to give them was like, please change the font and then only come and show it to me, because I was fed up of both of them using Monstrat every time. I could see that font used everywhere. All posters, all UX designs, everything had Monstrat, and I was fed up of it. I mean, it's a brilliant font. It's a beautiful looking font. The M's and the O's on it are brilliant, but there are certain fonts which are overused, which are used by everybody. And what I believe with fonts is that everybody needs to set up their own design standard, their own design style. And usually, your design style matches with your fonts. Every designer should, at least in my preference, every designer should have like a group of 10 fonts in their arsenal, which they know will work with their style. So if I make a button and Shravani makes a button, we have no previous inclination towards what kind of button it is, what does it do. We just have to make a button in terms of how the shadows look and how the border radiuses work. So what would really happen in that sense, is I would make a different style and Shravani would make a different style. But if I have my 10 different fonts, I know that my fonts would work with that style. So you should really have a list of fonts. Let's say 10. You can even do 5 in your arsenal. And what I would suggest is, since the design styles are a little different nowadays, like they're all very similar because everybody is moving towards minimalism. So everybody might have the same fonts. So maybe out of the 10, the 8 fonts are similar, but you should have one or two fonts which are different from everybody else. Like I remember when I started out with designing, I used to use a font called Monroe, and now I used to use it like 2 to 3 years back. And because I saw it on Behance, like a very random person posted on it, and I liked the font over there. It was a free font, and it looked like Product Sans. But now I look at it, everybody's been using it. I am fed up of that font now because I see it everywhere on every website. So I used to have it in my arsenal. I used to always have it with me that whenever I want to add something anywhere, I would use Monroe and it'll look good with my design. But now I've removed it because I know everybody else is using it. I need to set up my own identity, and I've changed it with Inter, which is a newer font, which is still used by quite a few people, but it's not used as extensively as a Monroe. So I would say that that's a good way to think about fonts. And I think another good practice would be to change the fonts on a website. Like go to nike.com and change the fonts over there. There's a good Chrome plugin which lets you change the fonts over there. And once you change the fonts, you'll realize that it's no more a sporty website.
Yeah, I think we still haven't fallen out of that monster art habit because even now obviously always default to Montserrat and sometimes even like stick to it. But at this point, even our developers are fed up of it. Like the last project I was doing, my developer actually stopped me and said, "Bro, change the font. We are sick of this font." And so yeah, I was forced into looking for fonts, and I spent like some 2 hours researching fonts and finally found one that I liked. That was Gotham. And when I implemented it in my project, it looked fine. But when I compared it to the old one, it was really similar to Mondstadt. So I guess it's really important that you break your habit and, try and research fonts, get to, develop your taste a bit more so that you're more accepting of fonts that are for different style. Because once you see something a lot of times, you actually get accustomed to it. And whenever you change that, it feels weird. So you don't like it. In a lot of cases, you don't end up liking it. So that's also something like a lot of people should keep in mind. But talking
True.
about fonts and UX projects, uh, even now I'm struggling with UI UX because it requires a lot of research, right? Like some people think it's just placing rectangles on a software or just observing some websites around you and just mimicking that because yeah, it works most of the time. But Samad, since you are starting a career in that, what do you feel about this?
So as Aditya just said, making rectangles on a screen, I think this reminds me of something in my office. So we have like we on one Friday we all decided that it's pretty fun to change our taglines on Slack, and everybody changed their taglines to something funny. And one of the designers changed their taglines to "I make rectangles on a screen," because from the outside, a designer they look like they make rectangles on a screen, but it's much more than that. It's a much more tedious process than that, and everybody has to follow a process. But we all if you ask any designer out there what a process should be, they'll say your 80% of your time should go into research and 20% of your time should go into making something. Yes, that's just saying something. A lot of people just say that, but we are all humans. At the end, we don't practice that. Yes, we should practice that, and we should try and practice that, and we should make our habits around that we practice that. But I don't think so anybody practices that. And if you tell a fresher who's just got into design that you have to research a lot, you have to read a lot, and then only you can implement stuff, you'll scare them off. I think for what I do to make sure that I research stuff, I have a proper process in place. So I do, whenever I get a task to do, I don't open up Figma, I don't open up Sketch, I don't open up XD. Those are not in my bottom taskbar pinned as well. I don't see the icon, so I'm not inclined to open that. I just see one icon in my bottom bar, which is Notion. So when I open Notion, I see a button on it which which says what kind of a task is it. I have three different pipelines designed for me. One is a UX task, one is a UI task, and one is a animation task. So I just choose one of them, whatever kind of a task it is. Let's say I choose a UI task in which the UX is already ready for me. I have a template defined for me, which helps me answer those questions. And if I cannot answer those questions, it inclines me towards doing that research. So let's say on the UX part, UX question, my first question will be: is the UX flow complete? If it's not, what is missing? So that inclines me. If it's not done, if it's done, if it's done, then completely you can move on to the next question. If it's not done, you have to do a little bit of research. It kind of inclines you towards doing a little bit of research. Then my second question is, if the UX flow is ready, are you happy with it? Does it cover all the sections that have been defined to you by the product manager? And if it is not done, then it kind of inclines me to clear my doubts with my seniors, to clear my doubts with the product manager, to clear my doubts with the developers, so that I am very well versed with the project. And that's another way of inclining me over there. And my third question is, if everything is done, then do you have a theme in place for you to do it? And if you don't have a theme in place, why don't you have a theme in place? So this kind of again pushes me towards researching about themes, making sure I have um, maybe I have a theme in place. And this is a pretty cool way to make sure that you always are ready to move towards a researching platform.
Talking about themes, I think something that all of us and the rest of the world has noticed a lot lately is that Google changed their icons, like all of them. And while I can kind of see where they were going with that, like they wanted to bring more cohesion to all of their different apps and services. But at the end of the day, when I open my phone and I'm trying to go onto Gmail, I kind of have a hard time, figuring out where it is because ultimately they all look like, squares in the same Google colors. So I guess this is something that they must have thought about, but a big company like Google still took this decision. And what do you guys think? Why did they do that?
I
I
think,
mean,
yeah, you can go on.
no, no, go on. I just spoke before this. It's your turn.
All right. Yeah, I think from my personal point of view, it's you can see some sense into their decision, right? Like even if you believe that they don't look as good as they used to, they have improved upon their cohesion, and they more look a lot more alike than they used to. So now they look like they are under a under one product tree, and there are different aspects of that one product. I think Samarth would agree on that. Like that's, I think, what the reasoning behind their decision was.
I think I do get their point why they made the change. I don't like it. I really don't like it. I don't understand how something of that sense could come out of a designer or a design team. But what I believe in, it's just a belief. I'm not putting out any facts here. But what I believe is this is a business decision, and it really inclines towards what Google is aiming for. Now, look at people around you. They know what Gmail is, they know what Google Photos is, they know what Google Lens is, they know what GPay is. They know these terms, and each and every term has Google in front of them, right? Or a G in front of them. So people really they don't really need to brand out or sell anything that is, let's say, they're selling out Gmail as an email service. That was something they used to do 5 years back, 3 years back, or 2 years back, or until the last year. They really don't have to do that anymore because it's the industry standard. If anybody wants to send you an email, they'll say, मेरे को Gmail कर दो. So I think that's something they have established, and now their next aim is to aim at businesses. They need to bring in people for their Google Workspace, or previously known as Google Suite, because their main competition is with like the Zoho Workspace, the Amazon Workspace, the Microsoft Workspace. They really want to compete with that. They want to compete with Slack. They want to compete with AWS. They want to make sure that their name is out there, and people really don't know what Google Workspace is. They know what G Suite is, but they only know it to an extent that it gives me an email. So they really want to brand that out. And I think that's what their aim is with making all these icons similar, to make sure it looks to a person in the company that they all of them is part of one Google Workspace. And this kind of sells the product Workspace. And as soon as the Workspace name is up there, everything under it sells itself. So maybe that's the idea behind that, and that's the business decision behind this, and maybe that's why the designers have taken that decision as well.
Yes, I think that's a really valid, justification for that. Also coming to the design in the logo changes, someone just mentioned this in the chat about the design, about the medium icon. So how medium has changed, over the past decade from going from a black background with a simple M on it to that colorful logo of theirs. And when people pitched in, ki, oh, this was a riff on the entire branding process, and they again changed back to the original, serif font that they used to use. So, and recently in 2020, they just went over to those new ellipses. I don't really, agree with them. What do you think, Aditya and Samarth?
Um, yeah, so for Medium, the branding is really important. I feel it really contributes to the user experience they provide because, like, as it was just a few weeks ago, it was more of an ink on paper vibe that they used to have on the website that really promoted quality content and well-written blogs. So for a company that has a culture of changing logos every few years, which reflects their internal decisions, like how they when they started out, they were making a few changes, experimenting something, and when they changed to the green logo, it was usually criticized. But I feel that at that point of time, they were trying to appeal to a more funky or a more uh, casual user base, and with the another change to back to black and white I feel it's more back towards its original ideals of having quality content available to people and having different monetization approaches that they didn't used to have before. But ellipses, I feel, is justified in a way that actually I don't really have something to justify ellipses. I thought it would come to me if I talked about the history, but it really hasn't. So I don't know what they were thinking when they changed the logo.
Maybe their logo was also made with that sense that maybe something will come to their head while making ellipsis, and they'll do that, and something didn't nothing came to their mind. I think is she being a graphic designer, she has a lot of idea about ellipsis.
Yeah.
Maybe she can explain something here.
I mean, yeah, I do, but honestly, this was something that I didn't understand either. So I thought, okay, let me look at the actual source. So I read up some articles by Medium themselves who were justifying what their thought process behind this change. And what they said was that these three ellipses, they represent an unfinished thought. And I guess that's kind of an abstract way to look at it. I mean, honestly, I don't see it. I think it's just a publicity stunt of sorts to get more attention towards them. But to each their own, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the logo in itself defines itself. It's unfinished, in my opinion. But yeah, I think, but the whole branding for the website has really been changed to a positive sense. I think the whole website now exudes not just a blog platform but a community, and I think Shravani would agree to that, and Aditya was also talking about building up a blog system and a community over there. So I think that's a positive from Medium side, regardless of their uh, just circular logo.
Yeah. So we had a question in chat about obtaining licenses or getting software that are paid. So what we would suggest, I guess, is be on lookout for uh, for uh, educational licenses because with our EIT email address, we can actually get a lot of software for free. For example, even I discovered today that Figma, you can get the Professional Pro plan using your VIT email address. So yeah, like try out wherever you can by putting in your VIT email address, and maybe you can get a lot of free alternatives for it. Any
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, yeah, so I think that's about it. But if you all have any doubts or any, questions to put up, go ahead and put them in the chat. We're here to, answer and take questions from you in the audience here.
Yeah, so I think someone is asking how UI and UX are different, and he was asking if you can brief a little more about it, Samat.
Sure, I think we can take up that question, and I think that's a very general question a lot of people ask, that what is the difference between UX and UI? I think UX can be categorized into multiple ways. I categorize it as three different domains. One could be your UX from going from one page to another, that making sure the user's journey is perfect. They know where they're going and they know how they're going. So basically, marking out the roads for them and making sure the roads are perfectly built out for them. But another aspect of UX is animations. Like when they're doing a journey, then it needs to be slick. Yet again, relating to the previous example, that you're going past through on a road, so there are dhabas on your left and right, there are restaurants on your left and right, and that makes your experience nicer. So I think that's a good way of adding animations, and that's like making sure that the animations built in well with a UX. And the third one is your on page UX, and on page UX is making sure when the person is on a certain page, they know what they're doing, they know why they're here, they know where it can take them, they have an idea that okay, this is the page for this and I am here for this. And I think, again, going back to the road example, let's say you stop at a dhaba, you need to show them the menu to show them what to buy, and the menu needs to be intuitive for them. And if they want to have aloo ka paratha, give them aloo ka paratha. So I think that's the way you should be on a road. The road should be well built, they should know where they're going by the road, they should have options to go left and right, like a dhaba or a restaurant. And if they go to the restaurant or the dhaba, it should be nice for them and they should get what they want. So I think that's a good way to say what UX is. And UI is basically how it looks. So the road has a lot of paintings on it, it has a lot of lights around it, it has the restaurants to the left and right have fancy chairs around it. To make sure that all of this UX ties in together and looks good for the person to travel via the road, I think UI is important.
Um, I think we have one more question that just popped up. I think we can take that and then close. What are the different things that you read to keep yourself updated about the current design trends and announcements?
I think for me personally, I like to. I'm a big book reader. I'm a big podcast listener. So I've been recently reading a lot of podcast books, and also listening to a lot of podcasts which are design oriented and also life oriented. Because usually what people think as UX designers is that we need to make this application nice. No, you don't have to make this application nice, you just have to make it feel nice to the person who has certain feelings. So you also need to understand the person who's sitting behind that screen. So that's something I've been exploring as well. I've been reading books about human psychology, how I can improve myself and how I can improve the habits for others, how I can understand what other people think. And there are a couple of good books. There is Atomic Habits, that helps, that makes you understand that why people do certain habits. There is Obstacle is the Way, that helps you understand that if people are faced with difficulties, how you can give them a certain way, and how you can give them a specific way to solve that issue. And I think your general startups and applications do that. Then there is Sprint, which is a brilliant book by a Googler, which helps you understand what happens in design sprints and what exactly a design process is. There are multiple of podcasts out there. I think everybody who does a podcast and has around a lot of listeners is someone who's very knowledgeable. And it's just good to listen to people and understand from them. And I think I would suggest that uh, another way is to make sure that you read a lot of blogs, you read a lot of design researches. There's a good amount of researches from Ola, from Uber, from Google, from Flipkart. I think Flipkart has a brilliant research on how they were the first company in India to reach out to the million people and build for the million people. I think Amazon brands it out more, but I think Flipkart was the first team to do the research around it, and they have actually explained it very well in their blogs. And there's a brilliant blog by Google Pay as well, which came out like I think 4 days back, in which they talk about how the Google Pay application changed completely for India from outside. So if you open it outside and open it in India, it's completely different. They had to completely change how the application looks, change the UX, and why they did that. And reading those will help you understand that why certain decisions are taken, and when those decisions are taken, what was kept in mind and what is the current trend for that.
Hmm. Okay, so I think with that, we have actually come to the end of this, and it has been great. I have had enjoyed this time sharing and giving you a lot of insights. Thank you, Samarth, Ishi, Aditya, to actually take out time and come here today. So yeah, I hope all of you have taken something back from this, and all those beginners out there have got a little idea on how to get started now. Hopefully, we'll be back with something new the next time. And yeah, I think let's head to dinner now.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me. Bye.